All right. Well, I appreciate everybody coming to listen to this. I hope it's not too esoteric. And my main intention is to show that the developer tools are not just for developers, and there's useful features in it for everybody.
Take it off, guys. Talk to you later.
Take care, Kevin.
See you
Bye-bye.
Tuesday.
So as I was saying, I got interested probably a decade ago when I was in a computer user group in Rochester, New York, and one of the members asked what a bookmark was. And I'm like, okay, everything on the internet is 90% of what people do on the internet is done through a web browser. If people don't know what's in their web browsers, they're not able to adequately take advantage of the internet. And so I started doing a series of talks on web browser stuff. And one of the things that I like to do is customize as much as I can to suit myself, including writing user scripts to modify web pages. Unfortunately, I do it rare enough. I have to kind of relearn JavaScript every time I do it. And so being able to get some error messages about what I'm doing wrong out of the developer tools has been a godsend to me. And there's some tools in there that make some of the aspects of writing JavaScript code a lot easier. And so I've noticed, over the years, I've poked around at the developer tools and try to figure out stuff by trial and error. And I've noticed there's a lot of really cool tricks you can do with the developer tools, even if you're not a developer. And so without further ado, I'd just like to go in some demonstration of what we can do. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. And then how do I drag the Zoom stuff off? There we go. Now you should all be seeing a web browser, I hope. This is Microsoft Edge. And
let me just interject for anybody who hasn't noticed this, but if you look on Mark's part of the screen, there's the 3 dots up there in the upper right-hand corner. If you click on that, you can select pin, and that will make Mark's image almost the full screen instead of just a little bit.
Thank you, Wayne. All right, now, let's see. I've just lost my Zoom control, so I'm sure I can get back to screen sharing, but oh, there it is. It just keeps popping up. Zoom is not the video chat that I use the most, so bear with me as I get with it. But anyhow, so the first thing I want to show you is on any web page you're on, you can right-click on an element of the web page, and there's an inspect option. Also, if you look in the menu, it can be the file menu in Firefox, or the hamburger menu that looks like 3 lines in Chrome, or the 3 dots they use in Edge. Under More Tools is Developer Tools, and they tell you Control-Shift-I. And what they don't tell you is that function key 12 also will bring up the developer tools. And so you can use any one of those 3. If I'm trying to select an element, I'm already moving my mouse. So if it's something that is selectable, I generally right-click on it to select it and bring up the developer tools. And so like on the Google page, if I want to play with the Google search button, I'll inspect that. And you'll notice there's some code highlighted here. If I just hit the delete key, what was highlighted just disappears. So if you don't like the Google Doodle of the day, you can inspect that and just hit the delete key and poof, it's gone. If you want to do something else with an element, you can also use the selection tool here to click on it. And this button has whatever that hex code, the background to that is whatever that hex code translates to. Let's say I want to make it black instead, or blue. You can just pick a color, and it's not doing anything here. Let's play with the foreground color. Either that or I'm on the wrong place. Let's try red here. Yep, see, it made the text red. Sometimes with styles and cascading style sheets, there's multiple layers. And I think up at the top, the stuff can be overridden by some of the stuff further down. And I get lost in that very quickly because CSS is not one of my strengths for web coding. But getting in, removing an object, and playing with the styles are the first three things I wanted to talk about. That's just some of the basics that you can do. Are there any questions on those three items?
I have a question on some of the pages I go to. You want to highlight a piece of text to copy it, and the color is so light that you can't even really see what you're highlighting. Yeah, say you have blue here. One of the pages I go to, it's a real light gray, so it's almost impossible to see what color it is. Is there a way to change that? Is that relevant to what you're talking about?
The easiest way to do that is with a high contrast extension. There are a lot of accessibility extensions that are designed to see things like that on a web page and automatically correct the colors for you. You can go in and find it, but it can be like finding a needle in a haystack to find which style information actually. See, like here, there's a style for hovering that makes things light gray. And it's been overridden by something else, but the background color here, let's see if we can make that blue. And it didn't change the gray background from where I've highlighted the text. So I didn't find the right one. So you can spend a long time poking around till you find the right style thing. If you see,
the extension sounds like a better idea.
Yeah, the extension is going to make it a lot easier. Like here in this division, you can see a background color is specified right in the code, and you can right click on that and edit the raw HTML. And now that that's expanded, I have a hard time finding the color again. Here, background color, and let's make the background color here black. And I really like that you don't have to use the hex code for the basic colors. I like the names better myself. Now, if I just click somewhere else, something should have changed to a black background. And I don't see where it was. Well, I'm going to just delete the thing and see what disappeared. Oh, I don't know. Oh, it must have been something hidden in one of the pull-down menus. Anyhow, yeah. Some things are real easy to find, like if plain text on a page that's like black on white, you can highlight that and inspect it. And you can usually figure out what the colors are. This is the kind of thing that usually takes me a while. Is like, if I want to play with the colors on a web page, I usually spend 20 minutes poking before I find the right place. I am not an expert at this. I'm a hack. And the style stuff is not my strength. So with that said, I'm going to move on to something that's a little more interesting. And I'd like to show you the network tab. So for that, I'm going to bring up a podcast page, and this will let me play a podcast. And but there's no download link. So I can just inspect anywhere on this page. And over here, usually when you inspect something, it shows you the elements. You can also look at the console, which gives you error messages and a place where you can submit code and other things. Lets you see all the various web pages and files that are being served. And you can see without an ad blocker, I'm seeing a bazillion ad servers loading ad content. And over here in the network, you can see all the network traffic that happens when the page comes. And if I click on media, it's not showing anything, but watch what happens when I start playing the podcast. You have a concern that younger children. Well, that's weird. When I did this a couple of days ago, it showed me the name of the audio file, and that's the screenshot I put in there. What am I doing wrong here?
Could it be in your browser's cache?
Well, yes, and finding stuff in the cache is really tricky sometimes. Just reload the page once. Ah, there it is. I reloaded the page. It didn't show up because it wasn't new since I came in here. So you can see the media, and there's an 85 byte chunk of media here. That is an M4A file and something that's already been cached. I'm going to right click on that, and I can open that link in a new tab. And I can see that it's the hour-long thing. Now I can just use the Control-S key to save it. And there's the entire podcast as an M4A file, which I can convert to an MP3 or whatever later I want. And if I hit save, that's in my downloads. And now I have that whole podcast to listen to later. I can put it on my phone and not rack up my cell data plan, and so forth. There are a lot of things where you can still do this, but more and more websites are making that more difficult. But I wanted to show you a couple examples of that. Yeah, here's the screenshot I did a couple days ago. Archive.org has got a lot of video material. Here's a Pink Panther cartoon clip. Again, we can inspect anywhere or hit F12. Go to the network, make sure media is still highlighted because that's the last thing I looked at. Now, I hit play. The minute it starts playing, when I mouse over this, you can see an MP4 link. And again, I can open that in a new tab. Now I'm looking at the raw file, and I can hit Control-S. And there's the file extracted from the page, no download menu, but I found where the file is that they're streaming to me, and I can save it. I really don't want to eat up my disk space with this, so I'm not going to actually hit the save button. But I'm going to show you one more of these. And actually, I'm going to show you a couple more of these. Has anybody used HugeTube?
No.
It's one of the YouTube alternatives that people go to avoid censorship. And this music video was actually one of the less controversial things on the site. So I picked it as an example. However, again, same procedure. This time I'll just use function key 12. And media selected. Oh, I may have, yeah, there's the file there. And if you see my mouse over it, there's the MP4 file. If I open it up in a new tab, I have a second copy of it, but this one, I can just use the Control-S shortcut to save it to whatever folder I want. Now, on this particular website, if you go to share by embedding, I believe it will also give you a link that will give you a downloaded copy of the video, which is how YouTube used to work. If they allowed embedding, you could download anything using the developer tools. But YouTube has gotten a little trickier over time. So I'm going to close some of these extra tabs here. And So to understand this, when I was talking about network traffic, there were all kinds of things up there besides media, which would be sound or video. And one of them was XHR. That stands for XML HTTP request. Now, I'm not going to go into the technical details of what that does, but if you remember the early days of the internet, like most of us old guys do, the only thing you could do from one web page is go to another one or reload the entire page. And at some point, people figured out that they could update parts of a page with something called AJAX, asynchronous JavaScript and XML. And that was all done with XML HTTP requests. And basically, an XHR is a protocol to grab a little piece of a web page or grab some data. It wouldn't even have to be HTML. It could be data going into a table or images that are a photo gallery that keeps changing or anything like that. That's just part of the web page without reloading the entire web page. And so if you want to know more about the technical detail behind that, I provided some links, but let's just take an example YouTube video here. And this is a video that explains something I want to talk about later. And now if I go and inspect the page and go to the network tab, there's no media.
Welcome to an.
And if I reload the page, the only media is going to be thumbnails and stuff like that. No video.
Welcome to an.
Okay, so if I click on all here, there's some GIFs and fonts, but the vast majority, when I actually start playing this,
Another virtual forge security cartoon.
There's
This is
some text
cross-site scripting.
and some
in short,
XHR.
XSS, lesson 1.
Mute that. And you can see, I'm going to just show the XHR traffic. These little pieces that say video playback, these are grabbing little tiny pieces of the video. And there's JavaScript that is being loaded by YouTube that's assembling those pieces of video and displaying them for you. And it's very difficult, but theoretically, even though the code may be obfuscated or minified, somebody can reverse engineer it and still get the video. And but it's not something you're going to get straight out of developer tools. So I just wanted to show you the lengths that YouTube goes to prevent you from copying videos anymore. And even if you embed a video now, it's still protected like that. You can't make your video downloadable from YouTube anymore, which makes it hard for sharing videos you want to allow people to copy, which used to be something I used to do. So, Richard, yeah, I think you installed a copy of All AV Soft at last month's meeting. And I found with my copy that it was a slightly older license than yours, that I could no longer download certain YouTube videos with it, and I needed to upgrade. And I tried to upgrade, and now it said, you can only download 5 minutes, you're back in free trial mode. So I did a little searching, and I found another giveaway website that I've never heard of before called tickcoupon.com. And they're giving away a lifetime license. And I punched in the license number in my copy, and immediately I was up and running again with the latest version. This is one of the nicest YouTube downloaders, and it works with all kinds of other streaming websites like Gaia and probably Netflix and so forth. So if you want to save a movie you've streamed to watch again, even when your internet goes down, these are handy tools, and there are many of them. And it's sort of a cold war between the people that want to control the content and us hackers that want to cut down on our internet bills by not having to re-download something every time we want to watch it. All right, let's see here. So any questions on the downloading before I go on to another point? Okay. One of the other examples, I ran across a WikiHow article on how to send HTML emails. And they actually make it a little more complicated than it has to be, but I went through the tutorial and this technique does work. However, it's a lot simpler. If you want to send some HTML, if you go to compose a Gmail message, and I believe this works in other things that are web-based, not everything, but this may not apply to Gmail. You can just find an example of what you want to do somewhere, like this table here from W3 Schools, and paste it directly in. And then you can edit it however you like. And you can, if you wanted to send a 3-line table, you could delete several lines, etc. Now, you'll notice if I add lines, I'm just in one cell here. So there's some limitations to this. Let's see, I'm going to start with a fresh composition and oops. And show you how you could insert your own code. So I've pre-prepared, for time's sake, a bit of HTML code. You can type anything in your message, highlight it, inspect it, and then edit the HTML. It's weird. Find your text that you wrote here, paste in your new code, click somewhere else, and there's the code. Now, if I were to just, let's see what happens here when I'm in the, I should have created something else so I could show you. It's hard to get out of this object to compose something else. So if you've got a message you partially composed, it's better to do that first, because you can get stuck in the element that you've pasted in. But let me just show you I have a friend who's legally blind, and he says he has a hard time reading black text on a white background. And so I tried to send an email and change the text colors. Oops, colors are over here. So I picked a black background and bright yellow text, and I got these little tiny black borders that are still on a white background. And so I found that I could, by using a table, I could actually get bright colored text on a solid black background. And this could be useful if you want to simply have a link to a small image of your corporate logo on any emails you send out from a business, for example. Now, I was dragged kicking and screaming into the HTML email world. I used a weird email program, XMH, that was plain text email. So I'm not a big advocate of this, but there are certain usage cases. And as you can see, Google lets you create bulleted items, change the indent, clear formatting, strike through quotes, but there's no insert table like your word process, like Word would give you. But you can grab any table off the internet. Once you've sent an email like this, You can copy and paste it and use it as a template for a new email. Or you can simply drag, well, here, let's, now I think, yeah, sometimes the images will copy and sometimes they won't. But anyhow, hacking webmail HTML is a trick that you can do with the developer tools. And it's made particularly easy because you can right click on the element you want to replace with something more complicated and paste the code right in. It takes you right to the spot on the page where that's being worked with. Now, the last thing I wanted to show you, I created a web page, and this uses a trick where we set the document body content to be editable and the design mode on. And I called this Write Your Own Web Page. My long and boring story is the title. And once upon a time, I started to write my own blah, blah, blah. You can, you know, this was a very simple page and I preset those things, but you can turn those features on in anything. And if you wanted to save this, so you could create a web page template with images, tables, whatever HTML features you want, and let somebody change all the text on it, or not. You could pick a page that you happen to like, even the CUCUG page, change all the text you want, edit the whole thing as HTML, copy and paste it to another website. There's all the code that I've changed. If I reload the page, it goes back to the original. Oops, I'm in the wrong place. And there's the original page. And you can see I included the HTML code to turn on content editable and design mode. Now, if I go to the console and copy and paste this little bit of JavaScript code that assigns false and off to those values, which is the default, again, things are editable. Turn that off. Now I've got a normal web page. I can highlight things, copy things, can't type a dang thing. So you can go to any web page you like and make everything on the page by making the entire body editable and the entire document in design mode. I got this idea from an article written by Amit Agarwal called Master Chrome Developer Tools. And in it, he only uses the first thing. And he demonstrates editing his web page in line. But when I tried it on his web page, it didn't work. And I had to do some Googling. And I found out that you really need the design mode thing as well as the content editable. And I don't know, this brings up the subject that JavaScript is a object-oriented language. So a document is an object, and the body is an element, and content editable is a property of the document body. Somewhere in here, I put some links to W3 Schools to talk a little bit more about that. Yes, the document object model and so forth. But I've covered the basics I wanted to introduce. And now that I've introduced the concept of the console, I'd like to turn things over to Quentin. And he's going to talk a little bit about more of the things you can do with the console and other parts of the developer tools. Now, how do I turn off sharing? It's giving me a menu for new sharing. Where's the, there's the stop share button. Pardon me, taking a moment. It's all yours, Quentin.
Okay. Let's see. All right. Well, I'm going to pick up where Mark left off, but I'm going to make it at a little higher level. In my case, I'm not a web developer. Well, I haven't been in like 15 years. I'm still a developer, just don't do web developer. So I thought I would cover what I'm doing with developer tools as a non-developer. Okay, I was going to have 3 demos this evening, measuring load performance, checking for errors, and even finding job listings with developer tools. As a non-dev, why do you want to measure load time? Well, why waste time? You know, if you like enjoying wasting time, then skip this section. Go do something else while I talk. Otherwise, you can make changes to your browser that will speed it up. And all sorts of changes can affect the page load time in your browser. The one I'll cover today is ad blockers. And the reason that you want to be able to measure load page time is you want to be able to quantify what those changes do when you make those alterations. So to measure load performance of web pages, as already mentioned by Mark, there's in the web developer, there's this network interface. And in my case, I'm going to use Firefox. It's what I use 99% of the time. And it has a convenient hotkey called Control-Shift-E to go straight to the network interface. On Chrome, there's a way to do it too. It's a little more indirect. You saw with Control-Shift-I and you can go select the tab and such. Okay, now I'll give you a live demo of how to do performance listing or do performance measurement. First thing I'll do is open a new tab, and then I'll do the Control-Shift-E to bring up the network interface. This is it down here. You can see it's got the network tab, and you can use a little X to bail out of it. And what I'll do is I'll use the Washington Post website, and I'll load it with and without an ad blocker enabled, and then compare what it does. Now what you want to do is down here in the bottom section, there'll be a load : equals and a timestamp, and that's what you want to pay attention to. Okay. And I also noticed that the web pages load a lot slower while I'm in Zoom with the additional networking traffic of all the video. Now here's all this gobbledygook activity going on down here, showing you all the different aspects of the page that's loading. And when it gets done, you'll see load : equals and a timestamp. And like I said, it's taking a longer time to load all these ads and gunk with the video going. So, but you can see the ads are loading because I have the ad blocker turned off. So here we got the load of roughly 32 seconds. Now up here, now the ad blocker I use is called uBlock Origin. It's my favorite ad blocker. I like it a lot. I ended up setting up uBlock Origin for myself several years ago, but I went and checked it before this presentation to see if it's still a really good ad blocker, and people still like it the best, as long as you're not going to the wrong kind of websites that push their own agenda. So now I'll turn it on, so it will block ads, and then I'll reload the page. And you can see down here also, you're seeing all this notification about blocked by uBlock Origin. So it's cutting all these ads out. Now, normally when you run this test for yourself, you'll want to reload the page both with the change on and the change off several times, because there can be various various things that'll interfere with the load time. So here we got 24 seconds. Usually I get, if I'm not running a Zoom call at the same time, is I usually get 2 to 3x faster with the ad blocker turned on. It actually cuts out that much load time having to draw all those ads on the screen. And besides just cutting out all those ads, saving the drawing time of the page, it also cuts down on your network traffic. You know, if you're on a pay for bandwidth, you're going to save money. Does that make sense to everyone? How you can measure the load time?
Yep.
Yes.
In
One
my
question,
sure.
because you loaded everything first, is some of your savings the second time around due to things already being cached?
Well,
Do
that was one.
do the test in the opposite order?
Yeah, normally, yeah, if I wanted to do it more or more accurately, I would do shift click reloads on it. Now, I think that from my testing, I didn't get a chance to prove it, but I think uBlock Origin is doing that, some of that cache disabling in the background for doing that kind of testing I was with the reload on it. But if I wanted to really test it, I would do the shift click reload button in Firefox to make sure that the cache was invalid. But I didn't, I just simplified things for this test.
Thank you.
This is a total off the wall kind of question. Are you subscribed to the Washington Post or?
No, I just picked it. I was going between it and maybe LA Times. Originally, I had used in my notes, I'd done the Yahoo website, but it was so horribly slow and unpredictable with how long it would take to load that I just said, yeah, I'll use something a little more consistent. As in my example here, with disabled, it gives 32 seconds or 33 seconds, and enabled, it gave a little like a little over 5 seconds to load.
Wow.
And this one I actually did backwards with the cache. I actually did it correctly with making sure my cache was flushed between the two runs. But there's Yahoo has let's see what they call service workers, and this I'll talk a little on it later, but it's running stuff in the background that's also doing some other activities that make it also not good to use for this test. The Washington Post doesn't use a service worker.
Mm-hmm. I go to the Washington Post quite often, and they block you with cookies after like 1 or 2 times.
Yes, I have in my notes to myself to prep for this is to go and delete all the Washington Post cookies before I run this demo.
Yes, indeed. That's cheating.
Yes. So the next part, I was going to show off something called Lighthouse that Google wrote. And it ends up showing bugs and issues. And it does it in this really easy to use graphical user interface that anyone pretty much can use. It's available for both Chrome and Firefox. And now I'll give you a little demo of Lighthouse.
Cool. I'll plan on setting up, yes.
Okay, so first thing I'll do is the Chase website. My example here is, say for example, I wanted to shop for an internet bank, and I wanted to compare banks. And that's actually what I did for this demo. I went to several bank websites, including like Capital One, Citibank. I even went to the UIUC Credit Union and Chase. Of these, the Chase had the most interesting output in Lighthouse. Anyway, Lighthouse, when it's installed, has this little icon up here in the bar that you can click on. And when you go to run it, if you're running it on a desktop, you want to make sure to go down here and select desktop because it defaults to mobile. What Lighthouse does is it runs in the background of your browser, re-rendering the page multiple times, doing all sorts of category analysis. And these are the categories it will analyze. performance, accessibility, best practices, SEO, that's search engine optimization abbreviation, and progressive web app. That's a thing that runs service workers and does stuff in the background like Yahoo does that makes it rather annoying to try to do measurements on. Anyway, I'll go ahead. Hopefully this won't crash my browser. About one time in like 15, it crashes my browser and I have to restart. So I'll go click on Generate Report. And this takes about 20 seconds, 30 seconds to run, depending on the website. And while it's working on generating the report, let's see. Hopefully it won't take too long with the, by the way, this does run on your local system. It's not talking outside. It runs on your local system, generates the report, and then uses a GitHub IO website to display the information. Here we go, we're not too bad. So, so here they score it up here, it makes it really easy to follow. So 55%, that's a little on the slow side, kind of ordinary. It's got a really good accessibility score. Best practices, okay, it says, you know, SEO, they do a really good job optimizing it for search engines. And the progressive web app, it's not a progressive web app, so this is grayed out. So, but the interesting part here that I want to show you on the Chase website is under best practices. You see this line here? Notice it has security vulnerabilities. In the JavaScript that they're running as part of the website, their JavaScript has known severities. And I found this on the website like 3 weeks ago when I was analyzing these various websites, and it's still not fixed. This thing's got security vulnerabilities in it. That would cause me to like raise a red flag with wanting to use Chase as my bank. And one of the reasons, not necessarily these vulnerabilities, but they've remained unfixed for 3 weeks. So in software development, we nowadays should be using things called CI/CD pipelines. Those are continuous integration, continuous delivery that should be able to integrate bug fixes for libraries that are being used and turn around and publish them rather quickly within a couple of days, even hours. But this has been remained unfixed for 3 weeks. It's like, I think I would choose a different bank.
Does it tell you what the vulnerabilities are?
Oh yeah, you can click on the hyperlink down here and go check them out and go dig them out of the reports if you'd like. But those are the specific vulnerabilities. What concerns me is they've remained unfixed for 3 weeks, regardless of what they actually are. This shouldn't happen in modern, any company that's doing best practices, as this is the section. That shouldn't be happening.
Excuse me, is it possible that it's just an anomaly?
I'm not sure what you mean by an anomaly.
Well, sometimes code, when it's not exactly perfect, it could imitate something that's not actually there. So for example, I use SiteLock on my website. Sometimes SiteLock will pick up certain files that are PHP files that may be infected, but in actuality, nothing is wrong with them. It's just, it's coded in such a way, it appears to be something wrong with it.
Well, there is something related like that. In this case, that's a possibility. But the thing is here is the JavaScript library that they're using as part of their web page has known vulnerabilities against it. Now, they could have gone through and looked at those vulnerabilities and then just said, well, that probably is not going to make us vulnerable. That's quite possible. But the idea is, even then, they should be picking up the newer revs of the libraries without that in a regular systematic method. They shouldn't be they should be updating that regardless.
Okay.
At least by now. It's strange that they're no, because also when you're a developer and you're looking at known vulnerabilities like that, is a lot of times they're not a security expert and they're trying to determine whether or not they're going to be impacted by a security vulnerability. Usually it's just like, just grab the patch version with the fix and not worry about it. That's why it's like, Okay. The next website I wanted to show off is the CUCUG website in that regards. So let me go ahead and fire up the CUCUG website. and run Lighthouse on it. It'll run faster than it did on Chase. Let's give it about 20 seconds to render. Oop, there we go. What I found two interesting things to say about the CUCUG website. One, performance 100%. It is the only website I've ever seen that's got me 100% on the performance rating. And down here, you can see that stuff is being, all this speed index. I mean, the whole page renders in a fraction of a second.
Hey, Quentin,
Yes.
that page was handwritten. Page was handwritten in HTML by Kevin.
Yes.
That's why.
Yeah. And hence the next problem or the next issue. If we click on accessibility and scroll down here under tables and lists, it points out that you have a list of items that it doesn't properly start with a UL or OL. That's an unordered list or an ordered list. So we can bring up the source code. That's Control U. Oh, by the way, let me show you in the Lighthouse report for those. If we click on it, you can actually see what the code is right here. And it talks, these are the bullet items. Pick of our member unit. Can anyone identify? Click here for the picks. And it's talking about this bullet list right here under new site features. So to look at the source code for a web page, you can access that through the developer tools with Control U. And so we can bring up the source code page. And if we scroll down, here's the bullet list that we were referring to. And you can see it ends with a /UL, but it doesn't start with a UL. So one of the things you can do is help web developers fix mistakes. I have Kevin Heisel. Is he still in the call? I can't tell.
No, he left.
Oh, okay. And so he can fix that when he gets the chance to go ahead and fix that problem. The last thing I'll show. Any questions on that? Okay. So the next one was the job listing, and and this I just found out about yesterday. So if we go over and we go to wh.gov.
Yeah, they got a lot of empty jobs right now.
Yeah, and you press Control U to look at the source code of the web page. Right here on line 9. If you are reading this, here's where you go. That's the United States Digital Service. So they're recruiting you. If you see the source code, they're recruiting you to apply. So the tools can help you find job listings. Well, that's my portion, and I could bounce it back to Mark.
Thank you, Quentin.
You're welcome. There we go.
Lighthouse is an extension?
Yes, it's an add-on.
Okay.
That you can add for either Chrome or Firefox.
Okay.
It works a little better in Chrome since it was written by Google after all, but it works just fine in Firefox too.
Okay.
Since Edge is using the same kernel, is it possible that it also works in Edge?
I don't know. I've never run Edge.
Hey, Mark, Quentin, great stuff tonight. Thanks for presenting that. My laptop's about ready to die on me, so I'm going to bow out.
Well, thanks for
Okay,
coming, Brian. All right, so I've got a few more tricks I wanted to show that you can do with the developer tools. A lot of this stuff, you don't have to hack yourself. There's a lot of websites that have pre-prepared page hacks that you like user scripts, and there's a lot of password revealers out there. Some websites are nice. If I go to zoom.com and where's the login thing? Oh, I'm already logged out. Where's my log out? sign out. And if I go back to sign in and I type gobbledygook for my password and I want to see what I type so I can say, oh, it's supposed to be XXX in the middle here. There's this little eyeball thing, which I really like. And so you can toggle the viewing of that. And I'm not going to go into how the user scripts do it. You can load a user script to do that on a particular page. But all that, the input box for passwords can be either type password or type text. So I'm going to demonstrate, there's a alternative to Facebook called MeWe, and their claim to fame is that they don't advertise and they don't spy on you. So I'm going to log out there, and then I'm going to go back to log in, and you can see everything is just dots. Well, if I inspect that spot, now this morning I changed my password to a password I would not normally use, but when I inspect it, you can see input type equals password. And so if I just go to edit that HTML right there and change the word password to text, oops, I'm not sure if that extra space at the end is going to be a problem. So I'm going to clean that up. I'm going to click somewhere else. And there now you can see my stupid password, which I will change right after this talk. So if you're having trouble typing a password because you can't see what you're typing, you can do that on any web page. And so that's another trick. You don't need a bookmarklet or a user script to be able to see what you're typing. If the website isn't nice enough to give you one of those little toggles, it's a trivial bit of JavaScript to do it yourself, or you can simply edit the code directly as I've given you the example here. And there's an article that shows you step-by-step how to do that. So I'm not going to reduplicate it again, but that's another developer tool trick. Now, if you get to the point where you want to learn some JavaScript and start writing bookmarklets or other things, there's an extension called Selectors Hub. And let's say I wanted to play with this little home section on the page, and I wanted to figure out how to reference that. Let's see here. I want to go to, where do I want to go? I'm mixed up here. Sources, where is that? Oh, I have a brain, excuse me, I'm having a brain fart here. The part of the developer tools I want to look at, I'm forgetting how to get there. This is embarrassing. I should have made a screenshot for myself. I use this all the time. You can click.
Mark, if it hasn't happened to us already, it will. So just relax, we're fine.
Yeah.
This is this lets you pick the selectors you want to be able to just grab without even going into the developer tools. The extension will give you the selector for various contexts. Relative XPath is something you can use if you're looking at a number on a web page. The relative XPath is something you could paste into a spreadsheet function to load that number into like a Google Sheet, for example. And the JavaScript path is something you can use to manipulate a page. And I wanted to show an example of that, which I'm going to skip to that, and then I'm going to come back to my confusion part to give my brain a minute to catch up with myself. if we're looking at the login part and we know how to reference the password field in JavaScript, instead of all that stuff, we can just cut and paste something into the console here. Here's one line of JavaScript, and that reveals my stupid password. And if I want to hide it again, I could do it from here, and then I don't have to pick through the code to find it because I've already done that with the selector part. Now, whoops, password misspelled isn't going to work, and I can go and hide it again. Please don't go change my password during the talk because I'll have to recover it then. Let's see, where is the part? The one thing that I do get confused in the console is if I leave it arranged in a certain way. Well, there are certain panels. Yes. That I can't remember. So they can be hard to find. Like the sensors panel lets you override your latitude and longitude. And can't remember. It's in the styles part. Here's Selectors Hub. It was just off the screen. So if I want to know how to reference that password box, if I'm referencing it by XPath, this is what I need. If I want the CSS selector, it's there. And it gives me the code right here that I would use in JavaScript coding to grab that part of the page. Figuring out how to select the thing on a page that I want to deal with was one of the hardest things to learn in JavaScripting. This tool did not exist when I started to learn JavaScript, and I racked my brain for hours trying to figure out how to find to refer to the part of a web page that I wanted to dink with in a user script. And this takes a lot of the, you don't have to know near as much to be dangerous. So it makes it much easier for me to customize web pages so that the menus and coloring and so forth are more to my own taste. And sorry it took me so long to find that, but it's in the style part of the elements. Boy, I won't forget that again. That was embarrassing. All right, so the password change example, which can be done with user scripts, and the Selectors Hub extension, that is not standard in developer tools. That's something you have to add as an extension, but it's available for all the major web browsers, Chrome, Firefox, Edge, and Opera. And it's well documented. And if we move on from developer tools to do some coding of bookmarklets and user scripts, I highly recommend watching this video that explains how to find the various kinds of selectors using this tool. And this is an example. Once you know how to reference that portion of the page, then you can make a quick little cut and paste here. It would be very easy to do something similar to this once you know JavaScript, to cut and paste a line into the DevTool console to clear the cookie page on the Washington Post, for example. Which, by the way, if you look at the last link that I added while Quentin was talking, there is a cookie clear bookmarklet on this page that you might be able to use for getting around paywalls once you've reached your maximum. I haven't tested that, but it's worth a try. Now, let's see.
Yeah, Mark, I got the one we talked about before, Cookie Crumble, and it works well on the New York Times, but it does not work on the Washington Post.
They may be tracking by your IP address, in which case it may be harder to get around. But if they're working from does using a different web browser make a difference?
I only had it installed in Firefox, so I haven't tested it any further than that.
It's not tracking by IP. It is just using cookies. If you flush them manually, it works fine.
Yeah, well, that's what I was doing. I was just trying to use the bookmarklet just, to make it faster.
I think the problem is that when you flushed it, you had the page still open and the page regenerates the cookies on you.
I am aware of that. No, I did it afterwards.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
That's one thing I've found on those things is some of them have multiple entries. For like Washington Post will have 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And the ones you can't clear, they also have a separate file that is all in like numerical or letters that are scrambled up, real long file name. And what I've had to do on those was switch it to the when was it last used, and then it puts them together so you can actually see that it's like they're storing something in that unnameable file that is also tripping you up. And you kill that, then it'll work. So I don't know whether your JavaScript is picking up on that additional file or just keying off the text of the site name.
I bet it's not doing the subdomain correctly. There's a subscribe.washingtonpost.com, and I bet it's not picking that one up when it's flushing.
No, anyway, continue.
The last thing I wanted to show you was what it looks like when you go to the CUCUG page. But I only run, I'm sorry, when you go to the CUCUG Facebook page, and this kind of surprised me. I only run Facebook in one of my browsers because I don't want the super cookies spying on everything I do in every web browser. So I'm going to switch to Chrome here, and I'm going to hit function key 12. And look at that. When I look in the console, there's this big red stop warning me not to paste stuff in here. And that's because somebody put out a Facebook post with telling you that you could paste some code into the console, and it starts with a link to this text uploader site, and it probably is followed by some JavaScript that it contains the word document.cookie to grab your session cookie and upload it to somebody else who can use it to log into your Facebook site, your Facebook account. And this is a common example of cross-site scripting, which is a way that hackers steal your accounts. And so I wanted, when I saw that, I said, gee, I can't tell people to play with the developer tools in good conscience without warning them to not paste untrusted code into the console that could send your account credentials from a website you're on to somebody else. Any questions on that?
Well, I think that's definitely a good reason to use two-factor authentication. I know that's what I started to do.
Yes, but I authenticate to maybe several dozen websites a day. And for my bank, I'm willing to put up with the delay, but to get into Facebook, I don't want to two-factor authentication every time I load a Facebook page or log into Facebook. All right, then to finish my talk, I've just provided a bunch of references. I don't know if when developer tools came out, it was as well documented as it is today, but the documentation is extensive. The article from the Labnol blog by Amit Agarwal had a number of examples of things like I was showing you tonight. Many of them were similar to what I've shown you. He also shows you how to use the console prompt as a calculator, but frankly, I think a bookmark calculator or a web calculator or your operating system calculator are all going to be more convenient than that. So yes, you can do it, but why would you? The one thing that I thought might be interesting is this little piece of code here. He shows you how to see all the URLs on a web page. So I'm going to hit F12 here. Whoops. I hit F11 too by mistake, but I think I don't want that. And I'm going to go over to the console. And oh boy, Google has got some errors on their page, probably because I'm not running an ad blocker at the moment. Ad blockers can generate some failed to load errors too. Looks like Google's JavaScript isn't all that clean either. But anyhow, this little bit of code goes through and finds all the HTML elements with a anchor tag, which is a link. And then for each element in the array that it has returned, it prints the link and so this is just pulled every link off the page I'm looking at, and you could cut and paste that somewhere else. There's probably a neater way of doing that, so you don't have to edit out the little code here that says what generated that. Let's see. And there's one other thing I wanted to show you. In some browsers, when you go to sources, there's actually a little code editor where you can write your own JavaScript, and it will give you a little sort of like notepad for coding. There are ways to use the developer tools as an integrated development environment. And I provided a link to a fairly, there was a blog post here. Slash shouldn't be on the end there, not a backslash. That describes that. And I use this HTMLG online editor to compose the little fragment of HTML code that I used for my table example. So I threw that in the references. And then, one other little thing, you may wonder when you inspect something in the developer console and you're looking at the HTML elements, you'll often see a little grayed out == 00. Well, that's actually a selector. You can write console JavaScript that will refer to that variable and operate on the HTML element that variable refers to. And the Stack Overflow article explains something that I've been wondering about for years. And there's the $0 is the last thing you inspected, and $1 is the one before that, and $2 is the one before that. And so if you want to play with your JavaScript, modifying something on a live page, there's already a predefined variable you can test your JavaScript skills on. And that concludes what I wanted to cover tonight.
Cool.
Let's see, screen sharing off.
Oh, yeah. Oh, come on, sit over it. All right, so how's everybody today anyway?
All right, Richard, take off.
He didn't say he was going to take off, but I don't know.
He's gone.
Oh, George Crumis.
Yeah, George Cremens is down there in the corner. He came in while we were in the middle of things.
Ah.
Well, thanks guys for the presentation. I appreciated it. It's things that I probably won't use much on the Mac world, but it's interesting to see what's available.
All those functions should be the same on a Mac as on, and actually, Quentin, you were writing on a Mac, right?
No, I was running on Linux.
Oh,
But
Yeah, I have to look and see if that's available in the Safari browser or not.
I'm sure it is. All the major browsers have the developer tools.
Yeah, I think I may have to hit some different key combinations to have it pop up in the drop-down menus.
correct.
Yeah, I'll do a little work on that.
Yeah, we don't have a right click buttons, but it's control click.
Mark, are you going to share your link to your notes in the chat too?
Actually, they were in the meeting announcement.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
And they're in the chat now, aren't they?
Quentin's are, and I'll be adding his link to mine, the one that was in the meeting announcement.
Okay.
So you can get it either way.